Hello, and welcome to Mastering Dungeons. Well, that's weird. Usually Shawn says this, and I'm looking around our arcane library here, and I see a lot of blood. That's not usually a good sign, but the blood is kind of bluish, tinged with purple. That's not Shawn's blood, I don't think.
No, that's not.
Yeah, and you just stepped through a portal. Is this Jim Davis? Did Shawn send you?
Yes, yeah, I'm here to help. He projected an image last night through a dream spell, and lo and behold, here I am. Of course, I already knew that, being an archmage myself. So I'm here to lend a hand. How you doing,
Fantastic. Thank you. It's nice to have you on here, Jim. Welcome to the show. Thank you for standing in while Shawn is off wrestling monsters. If you would, tell folks on the show, tell our listeners a little bit about you and the WebDM team.
Yeah. So, for those out there who don't know, I am Jim Davis, one of the hosts of WebDM. We have a YouTube channel where we run like Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPG, inspirational and educational videos. We try to think of ourselves as like a video library of content. So in any given week, you're like, well, I'm not sure that I'm feeling this week's video, but a year from now, that's your video. Like when you just need to have something on in the background while you're doing prep or something. So that's us. We were founded, three of us friends sort of started a business together with this, and added in my wife and sort of partner Emma as a CEO and co-partner a few years ago, and found ourselves as a sort of media creators and professional nerds.
Absolutely.
Almost by accident. So yeah, we're all over the place. Twitch channel, second YouTube channel for our actual plays, over at WebDM Plays.
Wow.
And just launched our first Kickstarter.
So you took the dual wielding YouTube feat.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
That's impressive. That's impressive. I took extra languages. I don't know if that was a good call.
No, I wish that I'd kept those for myself. I let those proficiencies lapse.
Yeah, I know Emma from a game that we played that I can't really talk about the details because the product's not out, but the super fun thing was how she helped to attempt to murderize. She basically did the equivalent of throwing me out of a castle tower. And yet I look up to her for that. It was great. I mean, I was not doing good things. So
no, she plays for keeps, and prefers an evil game if she can convince a group to go for it. She's our secret sauce.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk later about your Kickstarter. But just to whet people's appetite, just tell me, give me the elevator pitch of what this Kickstarter is that you currently have running.
Yeah, so we're currently running Worlds of WebDM, Weird Wastelands, and it is a toolkit for running games set in magically altered and twisted wastelands. Think the Mornland from Sire, or certain deserts in the Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk, either as a full campaign in and of itself, if you want to go the full Dark Sun, or as resources to use for a one-shot or a short series of adventures.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So we'll talk more about apocalypses and why they're so much fun.
Right.
Why the end of the world as we know it will have us feeling fine later on. But we're going to get into some news. There's a fair bit of juicy news. It's not as insane. Last week it felt like all the things were happening because of the book announcements. But there's still a lot going on. And we're going to start with an announcement around the first D&D live stream that has been teased out for the upcoming D&D live event. And, last time, or I guess it was on our May 13th show, we talked about how Wizards of the Coast was partnering with G4. Mm-hmm. And we wondered, what will this mean? Because they're owned by NBC Universal. Well, now we hear this news that D&D Live will stream on both NBC Peacock app and on the G4 and Wizards of the Coast Twitch YouTube channels. What do you think about that?
That's your network TV adjacent. That's got to be an achievement for D&D, just as a thing. I'm gonna ramble for a minute, but I came into D&D rather late in not late in my life. It was like high school. What am I talking about? I was a senior in high school when I started playing, but I've been gaming in like Star Wars and Warhammer and other things before then. And so like, I didn't really have this like nostalgic experience for D&D. My D&D was always like right around the turn of second and third edition. And I'd always heard about what it was like in the 80s. Like, oh, there was a cartoon on and buy toys for D&D and stuff. It's like, all right, whatever. And like, surely we have achieved greater in this current era than in that bygone age. Like with like all the celebrities and the streaming. If it breaks down the barriers to people sitting around a table and throwing dice together and having fun, then I think it's a good thing for the hobby. Yeah. And like, it's really cool to see.
It's true. Now, there is one problem. There's one thing we have yet to achieve. I bring it up with Shawn often, and that is we do not have D&D branded bologna. There was a bologna product in Spain that was D&D branded. Yeah. There's evidence. It was a rumor for many years, and then someone found a picture in a magazine. So we now know that it's true. So until we achieve D&D branded bologna levels, right, then we're close. But sure. Yes, in many other ways, I agree with you, Jim. We have surpassed the bologna levels of the 80s in many, many ways. And do you want to share with folks who is going to be on this first stream game? Because it's a pretty sweet list.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the first game is announced to be DM'd by Kate Welch. We're featuring Jack Black, Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, Lauren Larkus, and Reggie Watts. I'm not familiar with Lauren, but the rest of those names sound... Yeah.
Lauren is from Orange is the New Black. She played the kind of like nicer security guard. She was great.
Yeah. I know you're talking about. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
very cool.
Wow. What a list of people. And the funny thing is there's also a question mark slot on this image.
Yeah.
And Kevin Smith said that the question mark is what was the quote? I know who the special guest is, and that special guest is an incredible get.
Top game designer Shawn Merwin confirmed.
They wish.
Right,
Shawn's very busy. Unfortunately,
right.
They'll keep trying. One day they might land Shawn. Yeah, so that was cool. And then, you mentioned the 80s, and this morning, the first thing I did, my wife laughed because she sees my shared Google Calendar, and she goes, what is this mess you're doing? Because 9 a.m. I had a reminder for Secret Lairs. Because this morning, Magic the Gathering released a bunch of Secret Lairs cards, which are this sort of special website you can buy cards from, and they'll have like beautiful art versions or something. And there's some sort of limited nature to these cards. And I dutifully logged in. Yeah. And I logged in because they had two boxes that were, the art was based on the 80s Saturday Morning D&D cartoon.
Yeah. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know about this. I'm going to have to be careful.
Yeah. It's not an absolutely ludicrous price. I think it's like $30 for the not foil version and $40 for the foil. But I could not say no to that. I love that cartoon. I have the DVDs. I watch them periodically. I want to be Uni or the Barbarian, either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. The cartoon was one of those that I missed as a kid, but I had the action figures somehow.
Nice.
And I have been I had like the War Duke, I guess, and there was another something. But yeah, there's a huge nostalgia factor for that cartoon because it just feels, I don't know, like I've played that game before where like when we were kids, we're like, all right, well, let's pretend it's really us.
Yeah.
And we're having to navigate these dangers. I've done that before. And it's very satisfying.
It is great. Yeah. It is great. Yeah, I did grow up during those with that stuff in the 80s. Even in Colombia, South America, I had friends who had been to the States and had bought all the figures. And so whenever I went to their house, we would play with those. And did the same thing, sort of imagine like, what if I was this character? And we'd watch bad dubbings of the cartoon on someone's VHS tape, which was a time-honored tradition back then. But okay, let's stop dating ourselves. Let's move on.
Sure. We're about to, we're about to take a hard turn into the cartoon.
Back to the Future with the DM's Challenge, which is now over on Sunday. Was I think Sunday at noon Pacific was the date by which everyone had to turn in their first step which was revealed to be an ultimate complex trap. So you had to look at they gave you an excerpt from Xanthar's Guide to Everything about complex traps.
Right.
And anybody who wanted to join had to create one and turn it in. Did you do this, Jim?
I didn't even. This is news to me. I'm learning about this right now. But that sounds really cool. I love like homebrew contests of like one page dungeon is one of those I think that maybe a lot of people have heard about, where it's like people all over turn in their one page dungeons. And it's like, do you need something to fill your random games with for the rest of your life? Then like pick up one of these. So I love ones. Yeah, they're awesome.
I love one page dungeon. I was a judge one year for those, and seeing like Will Doyle turned in a one page dungeon, and I love his work. And it was just one of those things where you don't look at the name and you just look at the dungeon. You're like, wow, this is really good. And you do your ratings for it and you're like, oh, Will Doyle. Yeah, okay.
There it goes.
Okay. But then a lot of folks whose names I didn't know at all. And that's really the point, is that, anybody can sort of rise above.
Yeah.
And this also reminds me of Paizo's RPG Superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that launched a lot of careers as people would turn in these entries and get notoriety, and the top contestants would really would earn a name for themselves for having achieved this. And it's tough because however many people entered, this is going to go through and they're going to pick out of however many submissions it was, 10.
Right. Yeah. There's probably, I don't know how many submitted, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 digits or something. Like, I don't know. But I'm always staggered by the numbers that D&D stats produces of like, their earnings per year, how many people playing, things like that. It's always more than I think. So yeah. There's a lot of good ideas out there.
Hopefully, if those listening, if you were one of the people that submitted, good luck. July 16th to 17th is when they will announce the finalists during D&D Live.
Mm-hmm.
They will then begin competing in a series of weekly challenges where each week 1 to 2 contestants will be eliminated. Now, that sounds kind of harsh, but the benefit of it is it sounds like people are going to get a fair bit of spotlight for those 10. So I'm excited to see how that works, because that's really one of the great things is seeing, and I remember this from like RPG Superstar, week to week, getting a sense of what they created and why. So that'll be neat. It'll also possibly an opportunity that even if you didn't make it to this round, or even if you didn't turn in at all, you can see what's going on and why people created one thing or another. I remember reading RPG Superstar entries that were super interesting and neat.
It's one of those things where it's like the hobby like flourishes in these individual tables, right? And it's DM and their specific play group, and being able to like tap into that is one of the things I love about the homebrew community and the do-it-yourself community, and like just D&D as a hobby is so wonderful. And so like to see them officially like supporting this with contests and promotions is really encouraging, because I can recall a time when it was not like that. and to see like the official backing of like, no, we want to share this with you guys, and like that's really awesome. I bet there's a lot of cool stuff in this contest.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. And the final 3 contestants will be assigned a final challenge on September 2nd. The winner will then be announced September 26th during D&D Celebration. So congratulations to those who entered. Just entering, you've taken a great step, and the learning can only increase from there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now moving on to Adventurers League. The Yawning Portal site is where Adventurers League now posts their blogs, and they provided a short overview of the Mist Hunters program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about this. This is premiering at the July virtual play weekend, so we'll see it next month. It is a story-driven campaign that is not combat-oriented. It is all Ravenloft themed. The focus is role-play, exploration, and social interaction. They're making some interesting changes. They normally you can go between you can go up to 6 and sometimes even 7 players at a table for a convention, and here it's 3 to 5 is the deliberate.
It's a lot tighter knit, and
yeah,
it seems like it's with a story-driven approach like that. Smaller groups, it just makes everything easier. People can really linger in a scene. I play in a game where it's me and one other player. Nice. And like we're a year and a half into the game, and there's all this like rich interaction between our characters and their backstories and their children and everything. And so like having a smaller group really facilitates that. That's really cool.
The games are PG-13, but they'll delve into aspects of horror. Each game or each adventure is, I think, providing you a different realm, a different domain of Ravenloft. And one thing that's really cool is there's been some additional clarity on character creation, and there's sort of two ways you can do it. You can do what's called the self-guided experience. I'm sure we'll get more info on this later. Yeah. Or you can partner up with a DM and up to 3 other players to create characters together through a short experience that it also includes drawing cards from a Taroka deck.
Ooh, that sounds fun. Yeah. I like a character creation mini game like that.
And Greg Mark said on Twitter that this is an alt campaign. So the current alt campaign is Oracle of War, which is the Eberron campaign. And so he said this is an alt campaign, and that he said sort of there's always one alt campaign. Mist Hunters is stepping up to fill the slot previously filled by Oracle of War, which is wrapping up. And I said, well, can there ever be 2? Maybe. So, but I think the main important part is this is officially an alt campaign that sort of has its own separate rules. It doesn't connect to anything main. And that's the important part of that. I'm looking forward to trying this. And I think it's if you haven't done Adventures League, this is a neat way to do something. And you like story driven, and this is a neat way to jump into that.
That's interesting. I'm curious, how the influence of more story-driven streams and the like has on this, because that's been a style of play that I've only just started to experience. I was much more of a combat as war, dungeon as a tactical challenge kind of approach, and I love that style of game, and it's been fun to expand my horizons and see there's a style of D&D that's can accommodate that as well. And I'm really curious about this because it's sort of getting to see that influence and how they're going to support it is an interesting part of how the hobby's growing and changing.
It's come a long way since the days of the tournaments where it would be make it through the hidden shrine of Tamuakan in X minutes. But then again, even back then, there would be some situations that were very different. And I've heard old timers talking about things like, it was a tournament and we never left the tavern because we were having so much fun. And it's okay.
Yeah. My theory is that it was the desire to focus in on the personalities of that one little miniature over there in our war game. I want to know what that one's doing. And let's take that one on an adventure. So even the birth of the hobby, when it's its most wargamey, there's still that wanting to explore a persona and a world that you can see the through line for. Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to another thing that I really love, which is Arcadia. Yeah. This is MCDM's magazine. Have you taken a look at any of these issues?
I have. I have not seen issue 5, but the others are phenomenal. I really love them.
Yeah. So this should release by the time that this records. We received an advance copy, though. I also I'm a Patreon subscriber of this. Mm-hmm. I'm allergic to monthly things, but this is a really good monthly thing. So we have a couple of articles, 3 articles in this issue, and they are good ones. Long-Term Curses, Leon Barillaro returns. I've worked with Leon as an editor in the past. Mm-hmm. And they had created... I forget what I think it was an adventure last time that involved sort of machines going out of control.
Yeah, I recognize the name from one of them earlier publication.
Yeah. Cool. I think it was issue 1. And then now returns with 6 long-term magical curses that cannot be removed by a simple remove curse spell. And it's fun because I think this is sort of that parallel evolution where the new Ravenloft and Richten's book has some ideas around these long-term curses. And these are different. They're not the same mold as the Van Richten, but they do have this idea of a strong thematic element. I'd say stronger thematic element in this case. Yeah. And the unique method of ending the curse.
That's really cool. We played through Curse of Strahd, and I was a paladin and we had a cleric, and our ranger in the party got infected with a werewolf lycanthropy, level 4. But at the end of the session, we leveled up, and the first thing out of our cleric's mouth was well, can I just remove this curse so that we don't have to deal with her being a werewolf? And all I could think of was what wasted adventurous shenanigans? What if we had to go on an adventure to have that happen instead of just dinging? Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I like this. And these have a number of interesting possibilities. One of them that I thought was really, and they run, there's a wide variety here in this article. One of them, for example, is that you can see the future, but no one believes you.
Ooh,
and I thought, wow, the DM can have fun with that, right? And
that.
whatever you say, no one can believe, right? Like, you know, that's trapped. That. No one believes you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Get out of here.
Then we get the Goldmonger subclasses. Carlos Cisco provides 3 subclasses based on greed. And as an Acquisitions Incorporated fan, these were just perfect. Right? In fact, I have trouble believing it's not Shawn Merwin who wrote these. They also have some amazing art. Wait till you see the like Minotaur that it has like, you know, a gilded horn and this really cool nose ring and goblins, and they're all blinged out with gold.
Nice.
It's fantastic.
Very cool. Very cool.
You get a cleric of the Avarice domain, a druid with the Circle of the Gilded, a paladin with the Oath of Acquisitions. And then we also get, if you have the Stronghold and Followers book by MCDM, you get Goldmonger Retainers as additional rules.
That's really cool. Like, that reminds me of like with the Golden Company from Game of Thrones, maybe like just like really expensive mercenaries or something. Yeah. That's really cool. Like, to me, I mean, I still love a classic D&D experience of like, we're going down in this dangerous place to get some gold because we want to spend it getting drunk, and like having subclasses framed around that is really cool. I like that.
The last article is Alabaster's Almanac by Sam Manel. 9 new spells. They range in level from 1st to 9th. 2 of my favorites are Compelling Propulsion at level 2, which has as a reaction you can push away a creature that's approaching you. That's kind of neat.
Very cool.
And then Gaze of Venom, level 6, gives you a gaze attack that deals damage and poisons as in the condition. But the funny part is it does have that drawback that if you see your own reflection, you are subjected to it. And I thought that was just brilliant. Brilliant.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. You throw that, like, you have like a villain use that so that the players sort of feel clever by like, oh, I had that mirror from first level. I'm going to try to use it. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah.
Great stuff. So then we have Shawn Merwin made an appearance. I've heard of him. He appeared on Owlbear Soup, which is a show that's part of the Saving Throw Show network. He was on this last Sunday discussing monsters and many other topics. You can find that on the twitch.tv/savingthrowshow. And then they will move it over to their Owlbear Soup YouTube. And finally, we're going to get to the new Strixhaven Unearthed Arcana. We talked about it last week with Shawn at just a very high level. Jim, you're familiar with this, so let's talk about what is in this Unearthed Arcana, and I want to hear your opinions on it.
Yeah, I mean, first off, there's 5 subclasses that are these sort of umbrella subclasses that other, you know, any one of like what Druid, Warlock, Sorcerer, Bard, and Wizard can select from depending on time. Yeah, it's
not the Cleric and not the Artificer.
Yeah. The Artificers are real. I'm really like the Cleric makes sense. There's a lot mechanically about the Cleric subclasses that like that's where their channel divinity powers are, and to get that 8th level damage rider, you know.
Yeah.
And like thematically it'd be that stretch, like they're worshiping the college, you know, like it makes sense. Like it sucks, I guess, but yeah, no Artificers. I'm sad about that.
Yeah, that was interesting. That also can be a little hard to balance out, but even then, the design challenge is really interesting. And so, you know, what they've done here is they have created a subclass that you get as long as you qualify for that type. So they're sort of thematically typed. And then what the subclass will do is it'll say when you, for your class, are told to take a subclass or a subclass feature, you get the one from this college. So your level is sort of still your same level. So if you would have gotten at level 3 a subclass feature, you do get a subclass feature at level 3, but it's maybe the first one that's on the list of this subclass. If that makes sense.
Yeah, this is one of those where like the way that subclasses are designed in 5e and how they each have a different breakdown of when you get the benefits and even like how much impact a subclass has on the base game, how it plays is like a strength and a limitation. And so, like, you can see it with the bard. Like, the bard only gets 3 subclass picks. Usually, their third level is like packed, and so they're having to like miss out on one of the features where a wizard or a warlock or whatever isn't. And like, it's one of those things in a home game you can always just go, no, take it at level 10. It's fine. But you can't do in a document like that.
Yeah, and the concept of this thematically around Strixhaven, because Strixhaven is a Magic the Gathering world. We know that there's going to be a book that'll be on this topic that'll let you play adventures in Strixhaven, just like we had Ravnica and Theros. So now we're getting Strixhaven. Strixhaven is something that should be appealing to a lot of people. It's the idea that you are in a magical school. It was created by 5 dragons that gathered like 700 years ago, 5 spellcasting dragons. They each created a college. And the colleges work together, but also compete, and they have different angles of study. In Magic the Gathering terms, they all have 2 colors, so they're a dual color focus, and that kind of creates the theme and concept of each of these. So we included in our show notes a link to a Magic website that walks through Strixhaven. There's a guide to Strixhaven there that's really useful. A lot of neat flavor, and of course, gorgeous art that helps you imagine these. So I can't wait to see what the final book looks like.
Yeah, looking through the guide there on the MTG side is like, it sold it for me, because it's like, oh, okay, that's what the Lorehold statues look like, or it makes sense that warlocks could be a part of it, like they're making a pact with one of the dragons or something like that, or admission, like their patron is just paying for their admission to the college, like that kind of thing. There's still an archfey in the background going, well, we expect results, kind of, And so it sold it. I personally really like the Magic the Gathering offerings from 5th edition. I'm a big fan of like interjecting like new ideas and new concepts into D&D, and I find them to be some of the more innovative books that 5th edition's put out. And I'm excited for it. Like, it might not be I'm the target audience for it, but like, I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad they're innovating and experimenting with this game of theirs.
Yeah, I was really surprised by Theros. Theros is one of my favorite books of last year. Maybe my favorite in terms of just the overall design and vision. I thought this is a great campaign you could run, and it doesn't matter if it's Magic the Gathering or not. Just that concept of having a short campaign in this book with this rich, everything here that's so richly described. Boom, win. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, there's stuff in that book I think should be in the DMG.
Yeah,
for like how to handle divine portents and omens and things.
Yeah, it really makes you feel heroic, and the going between the underworld and normal world. Really fun ideas.
Really awesome. Yeah, so Magic the Gathering has a ton of cool settings, and like there's awesome art. It makes sense. I understand some of the pushback, from long-term D&D fans who, but we haven't had Planescape since 2nd edition. Like, it's all, it'll be okay. The old books are still around. New Blood's all right, and we'll get it one day.
Yeah, so let's look at these different colleges. We have the Mage of Lorehold first. This requires a bard, a warlock, or a wizard. The college itself of Lorehold is, if you think of it in Magic the Gathering terms, is red and white. They are dedicated to the pursuit of history by conversing with ancient spirits and understanding the whims of time itself. So then you get a couple of features, and as we said before, your actual class will dictate when you get them. The first one, you get some spells. This requires level 1 or higher. You learn Sacred Flame. You get Comprehend Languages, the level 1 spell. And then you get some extra spells that are granted at various other levels. They count as class spells. They don't count against the number of spells you know. If you're a wizard, you get to add them to your book. So all that typical stuff. Worth noting that, say, 5th level gives you Spirit Guardians. So there's some, power in there.
Destructive Wave, too, at 9th. Yeah. That's normally Paladin only, right?
I think, So it's some neat ways to cross over if you like that. I'm always a little worried about intruding on other classes, but, it can be fun.
It's a weird thing, right? Like they're trying to recreate the flavor of the 5 colors in Magic with D&D spells, and so in some ways they have to like cross those lines of like, well, clerics, you're going to have some cleric magic over here, wizard and things like that. So I like to see the attempt to make those concepts fit, even if it is even if it does produce some weird results.
Yeah. And you can always at your table encourage folks to say, all right, listen, do we want 2 people with spirit guardians? Are you taking away from the cleric? You can have those conversations.
Right. Yeah. There's always those coordinations and yeah, certainly.
So the other feature you get at this level 1+ is Ancient Companion. When you finish a short or long rest, you can call forth a bond with a spirit of the ancient dead. They inhabit a medium freestanding statue within 10 feet of you to serve as your ancient companion. And this is the part that I didn't understand, and I can't wait to the poll, is if there isn't a statue, can I not use this feature?
That's what it sounds like, right?
That's
like you have to carry around a medium object? Did you dump strength? Did you take Tensor's floating disc?
You just walk up to the barbarian. Do you mind carrying this statue for me everywhere we go?
Yeah. Do you mind rolling a Goliath or something so that you have some extra carrying capacity? No, I love the look of it. Like I'm immediately sold on this idea, right? Of I can animate a statue with the spirit. The art looks cool, but the idea of the idea of needing the object of it suggests either a couple things to me, like this is custom for Strixhaven. There must be a lot of statues around. Then you can the wizard or whoever can just assume that there's a medium statue within eyesight.
Yeah, I mean, it gets, sometimes you're in an ancient cavern that has seen no people, right? Or you're out in the wilderness where there's no civilization. Why is there a statue here? I don't know.
Yeah.
But assuming we get past this, maybe you agree with your table, you conjure it, maybe after playtesting and feedback, they'll change it up. But you get a stat block. This is basically like a summon monster type situation. And so we have a stat block that covers this. And as we've seen in other design in Tasha's and earlier, you get to choose the type, healer, sage, or warrior. Mm-hmm. So you've got this spirit that's inside of a statue. It shares your initiative, takes its turn right after yours. If you don't tell it to do anything, it dodges. But then if you're incapacitated, it acts normally on its own self-interest. As an action, you can expend a spell and heal it. There's rules for that. And then you get to choose, but depending on the flavor you chose, you will get different benefits. So like the Sage version, you get a +2 to allies' intelligence and wisdom checks.
Yeah, it feels smallish. I guess.
That's going to be picked very little because the healer can take an action to grant an ally with 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus and temporary hit points. So we see more of this temporary hit point doling out. And the warrior can take a reaction to give an adjacent ally a d4 to add to a strength or dex save. So healer to me seems just stronger.
Scales, there's a lot to like about it. On demand temp HP is nice, especially throw it on like a barbarian, that's it's going to go a long way. The healer does seem like the strong option here. These.
And we'll see it gets increased later. So Lessons of the Past is level 6 or higher. When you bind with your spirit companion, you gain an additional benefit. So here it is. If it's a healer, your hit point maximum now increases by amount equal to your level in this class, and you gain the same number of hit points. So it's a lot like the aid spell.
Yeah.
Whenever you gain hit points from a spell, you get an additional 1d8 hit points. Yeah. Sage, you have advantage on ability checks using Arcana, History, Nature, and Religion skills, and once per turn, when you deal damage to a creature with a spell of first level or higher, you can deal an additional d8 force damage to that creature. So now Sage option gets a little teeth. The only thing here is that if you're a warlock, you have fewer spell slots, so you're not going to use this very often.
No, it's nice for, like the wizard, but warlock, to me, the warrior is where warlock is going to be at.
You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, sure. So using the warrior option, when you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can make one weapon attack as part of that action. And then if that attack hits, it gets an additional d8 radiant damage. So I'm immediately thinking of all the kinds of shenanigans you can do with all right, well, Blade Ward is a cantrip that might be of use now for you. Could you make that extra attack? Or I don't know, maybe I'm a warlock that can create my own heavy crossbow, and I'm going to Eldritch Blast and get a free crossbow shot with it.
That's true.
It could be a significant damage boost, I think. It also supports a lot of concepts, so I like that part of it.
Yeah. Level 10 plus is War Echoes. Once per turn, when a creature you can see hits a target with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force the target to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failure, the target becomes vulnerable to one of the damage types you just dealt to it. That vulnerability lasts until the end of the target's next turn and affects the damage dealt by the triggering attack as well.
This is a nasty one. Like, it could easily eat up your showcase big bads hit point pool. If this is like, a rogue crits or a paladin crits or something, like this could be nasty. I can't really think of anything comparable to it in like a spell or like
it's one of those things that it's not a problem if nobody's thinking about it, but if your party at all dedicates to it, or if they have, like you said, the ability to reliably deal a lot of damage, like through a paladin's smiting or a rogue sneak attacking, and you're gonna double that, that's boof. This could be very nasty. I would expect to see this kind of toned down a bit by the time publication comes, because I look at it and I go, man, and that's what efficiency bonus times per day or per long rest. It is. Number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. The refreshes the long rest, which is still, even though it's only limited, it's still that it's going to happen against your big fights, which are supposed to be your challenging fights, and I don't know. Don't love it. This
was supposed to be a mythic monster.
Not anymore.
It's over in 2 rounds.
Its hit points are gone in 2 rounds. Suddenly you're adjusting it's still up.
Right.
History's Whims is your level 14 or higher. You learn how to briefly channel the wild nature of time itself. As a bonus action, you can enter a state of chronal chaos. When you enter this state, and at the start of each of your subsequent turns, you gain one of the benefits of your choice. So you have 3 choices. Luck, you can see the future, and whenever you make a saving throw against an effect that deals damage, you can roll a d6 and add that to the total. So boost your saves. Resistance, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Swiftness, your movement speed increases by 15 feet and you don't provoke opportunity attacks. Benefit lasts until starting next turn, and interestingly, you cannot choose the same benefit 2 rounds in a row, so you have to switch it up.
That's
the
really
whole
interesting.
feature lasts 1 minute, ends early if you're incapacitated, and then you have to do a long rest to get it back, or expend a spell slot of level 4 or higher.
Like there's a lot of interaction here. There's round to round decision making on the player's part. Like, I'm not sure if you were handing this subclass like to a new player, you just want to warn them. It might be a bit much. There might be too many decision points. I stopped playing casters largely because I was like, when it gets to my round, I want to be fast and I want to be action, packed and paced. And so that could slow things down, but I like the interaction of it though. You don't know which one of these you might have. You could switch between one every other round, but it's a really cool feature. There's a lot to like.
Yeah, it's neat, but it is, every round you're going to have to think through which of these you're using, and that can slow things. And then, of course, it'll interact with it, assuming it comes up. You have to sort of constantly remind, well, actually, I'm resistant, so this, or I use my reaction.
Yeah, if it were me, if I was a player, I would have some sort of visual reminder for which one of these I had going, like a colored bead or certain dye colors or something. Because it's like if it's you, and then the player next to you has a similar thing, and then the DM's running 5 or 6 monsters, then that's how you end up with hour-long combat rounds.
All right, so let's move on to a Mage of Prismari from the Prismari College, which has blue-red colors in Magic the Gathering, dedicated to the visual and performing arts, bolstered with the power of the elements. Kind of cool concept. So you can be a druid, sorcerer, or wizard to enter this college. Your first feature at level 1+ will gain you proficiency in 2 of these skills out of acrobatics, athletics, nature, or performance. And then also level 1+ is kinetic artistry. You can dash as a bonus action. When you do that, you get to choose an effect. Boreal Sweep is icy water swirls around you. It allows you to move across the surface of water as if it were solid. And when you leave a space within 5 feet of a creature, you can force that creature to make a strength saving throw against your spell save DC. If they fail, they are knocked prone. A creature can be affected by the water only once per turn, but you can affect multiple creatures.
I'm curious as to when they go prone, because that would affect the opportunity attack as you leave their reach. So, I mean, I'm seems like to me the intent is to like you knock them over and then they're on the ground as you're flying by them, kind of thing. But it didn't seem clear.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
The other option is Scorching Whirl. Flames wreathe your steps. Once before the end of your turn, you can force each creature within 5 feet of you to make a dex save, or they take the fire damage equal to D4 plus your spellcasting modifier. So basically, at one point, you're bursting with fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm.
Nice little AoE bonus.
Yeah. Then Thunderlight Jaunt, you take on a nimble lightning form. Until the end of your turn, you can move through the space of other creatures. You do not provoke opportunity attacks. If you end your turn inside a creature space, you're simply pushed into the nearest unoccupied space. You can use a bonus action to do this whole thing, this dash plus effect, a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You get them all back with a long rest.
It's an interesting feature, like this movement-based, but like none of the classes that this is for seem to fit that playstyle. So
yeah, Druid, Sorcerer, Wizard, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm surprised Bard isn't on here. Like I know they don't have a lot of elemental spells to fit the theme, but like it seems a natural fit. Because, they could have no bonus spell list. So and just like by this point when I'm reading through this, I'm like, okay, what play style is this for? Like what like is it a niche we don't know we need filled yet? So I'm kind of curious. I don't know.
But you could build around it, or you could make sort of a burst, take the burst cantrips. You sort of get yourself into trouble, use your burst cantrip, get out of trouble with this benefit. Yeah, I could see that being fun.
Right. Get like
Sorcerer especially, I could see it work.
Sure.
You get in position for Thunder Wave. Oh, it didn't push that one that's next to me away, but now I use this.
Now I use this, Or get best position for a lightning bolt or a cone of cold or something like that. Yeah.
So at level 6+, you have Favored Medium. You have honed your forms of elemental expression to best suit your needs. Choose a type of damage, cold, fire, or lightning. You have resistance to it. And when you cast a spell using a spell slot that deals that type of damage you chose, you emit a spectacular aura of artistry, which extends 5 feet from you in every direction, but not through total cover, lasts until the end of your next turn. While that aura is happening, each creature of your choice has resistance to your chosen damage type while within the aura as you shape your favorite elemental medium around them. You can change your choice of damage type when you finish a long rest. That is way too many words.
Yeah, that is a meaty ability. To me, this speaks for a game where there's a lot of caster on caster fights. Because it's like, if I'm fighting elemental creatures, like I want fire resistance, but I'm not going to be using fire spells. For instance, but like if I'm fighting another mage and I don't know what they're going to cast round around, like I can always, tell myself, well, fire is always a good resistance if I'm fighting another caster. They might have a firebolt. So that's what it seems like, but
it also feels, in essence, what this is if you use a spell of, let's say, cold, then now people within 5, I can choose anybody within 5 and decide whether they get this benefit of being resistant to cold. But that suggests I'm thinking cold is coming in. Then why am I attacking cold?
Right. Yeah.
Because
why would I be using
if I'm
cold
fighting
to attack?
a dragon that would deal cold damage to me, I'm probably not going to want to attack with cold. So I don't know about this.
Yeah, this is definitely one where it's like, if I was playing this character, I'm taking the elemental adept feats that let me kind of overcome those resistances. Yeah. If I'm like, I know I'm always going to go lightning or cold or something, it'd be worth investing in those. But I don't think a subclass should need a feat to be complete. But yeah.
Level 10+, we have Focused Expression. Once per turn, when you deal damage to at least one target, you gain an additional effect determined by the damage type chosen by your favored medium feature. So if you chose cold, one of your targets gains an additional d6 cold damage, con save, or their speed is reduced by 10 feet. They can only be affected once per round by this. Fire, one of your targets of your choice takes an additional d6 fire damage. Fortifying Flames then dance around one creature of your choice within 30 feet of you. The chosen creature gains d6 temporary hit points. Hurt one, boost another. Lightning, one of the target's choice makes an additional d6 lightning damage and must make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, target is unable to take reactions until the end of its next turn as a residual lightning shocks its form.
Yeah, the idea of a rider for a spell is cool, like an elemental sense. But like a second saving throw, I'm usually like 2 dice. Come on, I got a lot going on back here behind the screen.
And this looks like it's always right. This is every
like once per turn, and you can you're generally only casting one of those a turn. So I mean, other than niche cases of like Hellish Rebuke, or something, can't think of any elemental spells outside of your turn. But
this is I think we agree.
It's just, I guess, if you're into the theme of this, it fits. I think that like this idea of like elemental expression through like performance and magic is like an art that you engage in. This fits with it, but it also feels like they're adding a lot to the process of play.
I agree with you. Level 14 plus, impeccable physicality. Your relentless dedication and training have instilled an outstanding sense of precision and grace in your art. You gain proficiency in dex saving throws if you don't already have it. And when you make a dex saving throw, you can treat a roll of 9 or lower as a 10.
I wish I had evasion.
This is one where I felt like the subclass was all over the place, trying to sort of make up for Magic the Gathering cards that might be associated with this college.
Yeah, that it did have that feel of it, and I don't know, like to be like I said, the bard does feel like it's missing here, if only thematically, but there's just it feels half baked. There's something else needed in it, just to sort of speak of what kind of play style it's going for and support it. But I like the theme of it. Like I'm not. I hope it sees some refinement.
Do you want to tell us about the Mage of Quandrix?
Yeah. So the Mage of Quandrix is based on a blue-green deck from the Magic set, dedicated to the study and manipulation of nature's core mathematical principles. And it is for sorcerers and wizards. They get bonus spells with cantrip guidance and first level spell guiding bolt, and then additional spells at 5, 7, or 3, 5, 7, and 9. Some cool stuff here. There's a lot of neat little additions to the spell list that they get. But this next feature, though, the functions of probability, is a doozy. This was their level 1 Mage of Quandrix feature. So when you cast a spell using a spell slot that targets at least one creature, you can choose that creature or another creature within 30 feet of it, including yourself, and you can add one of the following effects. The first effect is diminishing function. The chosen creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or they have to roll the d6 and subtract that number from their next attack roll before the start of your next turn, that's a lot of die rolling. And then supplemental function is once before the start of your next turn, the chosen creature can roll a d6 and add the number to an attack roll or saving throw of its choice. The creature can roll the d6 after rolling the d20, but must decide before any effects of the roll occur, which seems like the whole like, I've rolled, but I don't know what it means. Is the DM, do I have a DC or not? Like, it just feels clunky.
And I feel like D&D has started to take that out. So it was strange here, and somewhere else it appeared the same wording. And it's like, no, let's just let people roll after we know what happens. Like, just
just the cleanest way possible. Like, at some point it's Magic, so it's okay that it's sort of like metagamey. Like, I didn't know if I succeeded yet. Let me add this, but I think it certainly fits for the theme of the class. But what do you think about the fact that, like, every time they're casting a spell with a slot, they get this essentially bardic inspiration plus a half-baked bane on top of it?
I feel like no, I'm not a fan of that. I think if I were playing a bard, I would look at this and go, why are you endlessly getting this? Like, if you just did supplemental function, which is the giving someone a d6, every time you're using a spell slot, you're giving them a d6, essentially bardic inspiration for attacks or saves. What am I, chopped liver? And I haven't done the math on it, but I'm pretty sure that
both sorcerer and wizard have more spell slots than bards have uses of bardic inspiration, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it does feel like it's stepping on like both some thematic and mechanical toes with other classes, especially like a core function of another class. Yeah. So it also just feels like a bit much, because I was like, I would love this. I'd use it all the time. Like, why wouldn't I?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's no question about its benefit, and the idea that you can either debuff somebody or buff somebody. It's lovely benefit to get. I just don't know the game should be handing it out.
Yeah. To me, what I was looking at it was like, I was thinking of the divination wizard and portent, and it's just that elegant 2d20. You have those two numbers, you can sub them out, and how difficult it is to do more with that. Like, it's so nice and simple and elegant right there that you can like repackage it and give it to other subclasses, but eventually it'll just feel lackluster. Yeah. And so like doing something similar means you kind of do have to go more complex. And you know, or I don't know. That's sort of where my thoughts kind of ended up with it, was like, oh, this sucks. It's not just like divine portent. You just get a pool of numbers to substitute or something.
Yep. So we get velocity shift at level 6. Tell me about that, Jim.
Yeah, so this is velocity shift. When a creature you can see starts its turn or moves to a space within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to force the creature to make a charisma saving throw against your spell save DC, which you can choose to fail. On a failure, the creature is teleported to an unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you, which I assume to mean in the air, up a tree, you know, like... First off, I feel like from a DM's perspective, this will get annoying fast for me.
Yeah.
I will just be like, all right, we're about to have an arms race. Everyone's going to start within 60 feet of you. It's like, that feels like a blue card, you know?
Yep.
It feels like a, nope, no, you didn't kind of moment. So yeah. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your efficiency bonus, regaining them at the end of a long rest. So at least it's not all the time, but
it's still too many times.
That's a lot.
If it's not on solid, if it had a requirement of being on solid ground, I wouldn't have a huge problem with it. But the idea that you could be knocking people prone and dealing extra damage to them by suspending them in the air, which is what you would always want to do, is a little much.
That's a spell. That's different, because that's a spell slot. And like that could have been any, you know, it's the difference between a class feature and a spell sometimes, where it's like, if it's a spell, I'm okay with it because that costs something extra. But this was just, yeah. And then that's not all. Quandrix is a doozy, I think, because we actually have null equation, which is the level 10 feature. That's through careful calculations. You beset your enemies with abstract equations to reduce their might. Once per turn, immediately after dealing damage to a creature, you can force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. And then on a failure, it has disadvantage on strength and dexterity saving throws, and its weapons attacks only deal half damage until the start of your next turn. That's kind of nasty. Like, you don't see that many individual target debuffs anymore.
Yeah, and you can do that a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus as well. Yeah, it's still going to be like your big fights. I mean, and the thing about this is that a lot of times in home campaigns and even in published adventures, you may just have one fight in a day. Mm-hmm. So whatever you throw at them, this will be applied to them, right? Like the biggest thing you throw at the players they're gonna probably end up with this, because they could do it several times until you fail to save, and then you're going to be dealing only half damage. Yeah, for a round, and that's just, I don't know.
Yeah, after you've been teleported across the battlefield and had your attack roll reduced by D6, like this is one of those that I think it like looks cool on paper, but in playtest, I know, as I was reading this, it's like, as a DM, I would have a talk with the player, just be like, listen, I can't. I just can't. No, but we're not finished, because we have a level 14 feature of quantum tunneling. Your mathematical expertise extends to altering the fundamental equations of your very being. You gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, and then you can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, taking D10 force damage for every 5 feet moved while inside of a creature or an object. That if you end your turn inside a creature or object, shunt it to the nearest unoccupied space. Ooh, man,
thing that I thought about this one is that while I get that this school is all about math, I feel like we could have gone with math names that might be in a actual fantasy setting versus things like quantum tunneling and null equation. And, just these are sort of like modern names.
Yeah.
And I just feel like for better fitting to any world, to make this more useful and not just be Magic the Gathering-ish, I don't know, something that feels more like math and physics rather than advanced, non-Euclidean.
Yeah. No, I think I see where you're coming from. Like there's math's old, right? Like there's a lot of history to draw on for naming things. And it does feel very like modern or science fantasy. Like the concept of it's very Vancian math and is fundamental to magic in a way. But it's an example where like naming can be a big thing of how you present something.
All right, so Mage of Silverquill. This is a white-black school, the Silverquill College, dedicated to the magic of words, whether encouraging speeches that uplift allies or piercing wit that derides foes. No surprise, the Bard, Warlock, and Wizard are on the list of required classes. Your level 1 Mage of Silverquill feature, you learn 1 cantrip of your choice, either Sacred Flame or Vicious Mockery. You gain proficiency in 2 of the skills out of the list of Deception, Intimidation, Performance, Persuasion, or Insight. Sure. All fun. Silvery Barbs is a level 1 feature. Immediately after a creature you can see within 60 feet of you succeeds on an attack roll, ability check, or save, you can use a reaction to demoralize them. Unless they're immune to being charmed, they re-roll the d20 and must use the lower roll. If this then fails, you can choose a different creature you see within 60 feet of you. You can choose yourself, and that creature becomes empowered and can re-roll 1 attack roll, ability check, or saving throw it makes within 1 minute and use the higher result. A creature can be empowered by only 1 use of this feature at a time. So we again see this whole before the result is known business, which is weird to see, but this is a lot. This is like at level 1. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect both benefits.
Right? Yeah. As a reaction, that's it. Like, I mean, I guess it's technically competing for your counterspell or shield or something like that, but that's pretty powerful. But again, we're checking to see if somebody's failed and then forcing them to, re-roll, and if that, then, and
one benefit, this says once a creature fails an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw because a reroll is forced by this feature, then you can't use this feature again until a long rest. So it's sort of like you can use this until it works.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you expend a reaction, try this until it works. When it works, you cause the enemy to fail, and you bolstered an ally. So it is just once per long rest. That's the one good thing about it. But it's sort of. But you can keep trying until it works.
I was going to say, I think by that point in the UA, I had just sort of coming across like the proficiency bonus per long rest rider, so I'd missed this one. I kind of like that though. It's like, okay, until it works, you keep trying until it works. You get that one. I do like that. I'll revise my opinion.
Yeah, it did for me too. It sort of saved it, but I do think they should get rid of that before the result is known, because that is a weird effect that DMs cannot. It's very hard to sort of not reveal what happens and when somebody rolls. Because we're trying to run a quick game. So we look at the die and we see that number and we go, yep, that hits.
Yep, I'll call out the DC because it's going to speed things up. Yep.
Inky Shroud is level 6+ feature. You learn the Darkness spell, and it's added to your class spell list. If you're a wizard, you added your spell book, yada yada. You can cast the spell without expending a spell slot. You can't do so again until you finish a long rest. When you do that, you can see normally through this darkness that you created. And when a creature you can see starts its turn in the darkness, you deal 2d10 psychic damage to that creature. You can also cast the spell normally without these additional effects by using spell slots you have of 2nd level or higher. So you can see in this darkness, and you get to deal damage to creatures that start in it.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the Warlock Double Sight or Shadow Sorcerer trick. So yeah, I could see that. I find that these depend on the party. Some parties don't mind if a big blob of darkness gets plopped down, and others are like, hey, that's my line of sight, or I was going to do something. So I think it's a lot of playgroup dependent.
I think my biggest worry is we already had some groups that you'd hear about that would have every single character would take warlock levels to get devil sight, and then they would impose darkness and defeat everything. But now you don't even have to do that. There are enough Tasha's classes that can give you ways to see in the darkness, and now there's this as well. And so there's just these multiple ways that you could all be in darkness and all the time, all day long. And I know they're not trying to encourage D&D. That, but I can't help but worry that there's going to be some competitive tournament someday. And the first thing people are going to think about is we always are in darkness. Nobody sees us. We see everybody.
Yeah. And without even doing us the courtesy of playing an all-drow party.
Nope, not even. Infusion of Eloquence is your level 10 plus feature. When you cast a spell that deals damage, you invoke additional words of power to change the spell's damage type to your choice of either psychic or radiant. Any creature damaged by the spell takes extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus and has its emotions swayed with despair or adoration based on the damage dealt. So if you deal psychic, the creature is frightened until the start of your next turn. Radiant, they are charmed until the start of the next turn. And you can do this a number of times equal to proficiency bonus. What's interesting is this really works with AoE, so you can drop, a fireball, deal bonus proficiency bonus worth of damage that is, say, psychic, and they're all frightened, or radiant, and they're charmed. And it's if they're damaged, so even if they save, but it's a half damage spell, then you will affect them all.
That's interesting. There's in their damage, usually especially charm effect, usually get an extra save if you take damage or something, and just the concept was okay, I harmed them, and now they're going to attack me, and I get a bonus to persuade them for a round.
Fireball you, and you don't want to attack me.
Right? Yeah, that's exactly. On the other hand, fear ball, a psychic fear ball. That's awesome. Why isn't that already a spell? And and. So what I noticed here was that there's no secondary save. It's just if they take damage, it happens. And I kind of wish that we'd see that with the Prismari stuff, where it's just no second save needed. It happens, So
All right, our last feature here, Word of Power. You can invoke a Word of Power that is the pinnacle of your magical study. Two options: Deadly Despair. When the target of your silvery barbs fails an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw because of that reroll feature we got way back at level 1, you can invoke a Word of Despair to give them vulnerability to one damage type of your choice on the start of your next turn. Or Selfless Invocation. When a creature within 60 feet of you takes damage, you can invoke a Word of Power using your reaction to grant the creature resistance to that damage, and you take an amount of psychic damage equal to the damage that creature takes.
Interesting. So you would that could potentially have two resistances apply to that damage. You take if you had Mind Blank gives you maybe immunity to psychic.
Maybe. Yeah. It's interesting. This is still off of Silvery Barbs, which you can only use once per day.
Yeah.
But so now you can either buff them or debuff them. When you make them re-roll, and then you can choose to buff somebody. That's how the original feature works. And now on top of it, you can do one of these two effects. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. I'm looking at it and thinking of a spell like Life Transference, right? Which I think wizards would get. Yeah. So it's you damage yourself to heal someone else. And then you also choose them as the one that's going to get healed because you're taking damage and using this feature or something like that. I could see that. It's a very niche use, but it plays as a weird interaction.
So the last college we have is Witherbloom. The Mage of Witherbloom attends a college that is black-green in terms of Magic the Gathering colors. This is one I liked a lot. I immediately made a Luxodon Mage of Witherbloom. So Luxodons are the elephant dudes. And I decided that I had I was kind of all covered in mold. So I would use Thorn Whip, which is actually my trunk, my Luxodon trunk, and various other things like that. So you're in this concept, you're dedicated to the alchemy of life and death and harnessing the devastating energies of both. You have to be either druid or warlock. Your level 1 is
no wizard here.
No wizard, yeah, that is interesting.
That's interesting because this one is a very strong like necromancer concept. Witherbloom of all of them is I think my favorite, and it's interesting that wizard got left off this one.
Yeah, so your first feature is you get the cantrip Spare the Dying, and you get both Cure Wounds and Inflict Wounds. So that's pretty strong. Inflict Wounds is just one of my favorite spells to use. You then also get some other spells at various levels, 3, 5, 7, 9. These include things like Lesser Restoration, Revivify, Blight, Greater Restoration, and Mass Cure Wounds. So it's like you're a cleric here, but also with some dark sides like Blight. Essence Tap is a level 1 feature. As a bonus action, you can draw on a Reservoir of Life essence to empower yourself for 1 minute or until you use the feature again. For the duration, you gain one of the following benefits. Overgrowth when you choose this benefit, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, you can expend and roll 1 hit die. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
You regain a number of hit points equal to the number rolled plus your spellcasting ability modifier. So you can self-heal, self-spend your hit dice and use them.
Yeah. I mean, it increases as you gain levels, but it's kind of like you get, for a minute, you're not getting the full benefit to like 10th level. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it gets better as the higher level you get, but I can see it getting you in trouble.
But you can use the feature over again. So you could swap to the other option, which is Withering Strike. When you deal damage, you can change the damage type to necrotic, and you ignore resistance to necrotic. Well, that's very sweet. Because I'm always going up and doing necrotic to something that can't deal with it. Or I use poison damage on something that can't take it. So now you can just make it necrotic and know that they will take the damage. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest.
Nice.
Witherbloom Brew is level 6+ feature. You gain proficiency with herbalism kits, kind of cool. And when you finish a long rest, you can make a magic brew. You make a number of them equal to your proficiency bonus. Each one requires its own flask. It retains its potency for 24 hours or until used. And you choose an effect because they like using words. There are 3 features. Fortifying. This lets you choose a damage type from cold, fire, necrotic, poison, or radiant. If you drink it, you gain resistance for an hour. Quickening, second type. You can drink this brew or administer it to another creature. You get 2d6 hit points, and 1 disease or condition from a list that we get is removed. All right. I always wonder, paralyze is one of them, and it's always that, I guess I can pour a potion into your lips somehow, but okay.
Yeah, somehow. I'm not sure how that happens either.
And then the other one is toxifying. As an action, a creature can apply this brew to a simple or martial weapon. Next time you either fire the ammunition or use the weapon within an hour, the target takes 2d6 poison damage and must make a con save or be poisoned for 1 minute, which is a long time.
That's a long time, especially without a repeat save. Yeah. How do you think this stacks up to the Alchemist's experimental elixir, where it's I know that the fact that it was sort of randomized was a sore spot for some folks, and so I'm curious how that has influenced the design of this.
Yeah, I mean, this feels to me very strong.
Yeah, because herbalism kits is also how you make healing potions. If you have proficiency with that, you can make healing potions on top of these. So it's pretty strong feature.
Yeah, and you get a number of them, so you could easily say create, toxifying and give them out to everybody to use, or a mix of them, a toxifying for your rogue, and then you make a quickening to heal someone and cure a condition, and a fortifying for someone else. Yeah, it's pretty flexible. Interesting.
Pretty flexible, especially if you're going to go fight something that one of these resistances applies to. You don't have to worry about a concentration slot on a energy protection or something. So yeah, it's a really strong feature. I might be annoyed if I was an alchemist.
Level 10 feature is Witherbloom Adept. Your connection to the flow of life force deepens. Once per turn, when you deal necrotic damage or restore hit points using a spell, one target of the spell takes additional damage or regains additional hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. Yeah. But it is all the time. So you're always getting a proficiency bonus added to healing or damage. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not, and it's that would be like any like that would count cantrips as well, I think, because it's you don't have to spend a spell with a slot. So
yeah. Level 14 plus is Withering Vortex. When you cast a spell using a spell slot that deals necrotic damage to any number of creatures that aren't undead or constructs, choose one of the creatures that took damage. You drain an amount of life energy equal to half the damage dealt to the chosen creature. One creature other than yourself that you can see within 30 feet regains hit points equal to the life energy drained. You can do that a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses in a long rest.
Yeah, I think this is the one I was thinking of, like life transference, but because it's a wizard spell, I don't get it how that would be a nasty one. Yeah. But this is that's about a feature. Like Master of Life and Death is really what they're going for with that. Yeah.
This could be a lot of life.
It could be,
because you could deal a lot of damage with some spells to one creature,
right?
And give half that hit point value to someone. That's impressive.
Yeah,
and the number of times equal to proficiency bonus is a lot.
Is a lot, yeah. I think it's worth noting that, like with warlocks, their spell slots cap out at 5. So, like, if you're a warlock of this, like your major arcana or whatever it's called, I forget the ones that let you cast 7th, 8th, and 9th, like wouldn't qualify, I think, but still blight with this, that's nasty. Blight would be bad.
Be a good choice. All right, so that is the Strixhaven Unearthed Arcana, and there will probably be a poll up soon for it because it's been now out for a week or two. So let's transition from that, Jim, to talking about apocalypses for a few minutes. We've gone long a bit, but let's spend 10 minutes telling me a little bit about. First, give me maybe the thoughts in general when we're talking about an apocalypse setting. What are the characteristics of an apocalyptic fantasy setting?
Oh, yeah. So to me, like a post-apocalyptic setting has the features of like a resource scarcity, of living within the shadow of this fallen civilization. To me, the difference between like post-apocalyptic, whether it's science fiction or fantasy, or something like, say, Forgotten Realms, which features all kinds of cycles of civilizational collapse and rise, is the like length of time since the last one. If I'm playing a Forgotten Realms game and right after the fall of the Netherese Empire, it's post-apocalyptic. But when you're running something like one of the adventure paths, it's not. It's something else. So like that quality of proximity to the collapse is important. And like something is scarce. Like with the society that lives past this apocalypse has lost something. Whether that's like in science fiction, fantasy, post-apocalypse, it's like the knowledge of how to create all this. They have to go pick through the ruins of their former homes, and places that used to be mundane and ordinary are now dangerous and ruined, but they're also familiar. And so like it's those elements that I think really define it, that like living within the shadow of the prior civilization and within a few generations of the collapse, and like it's just having to adapt to these circumstances where we have less than what we used to have, maybe dramatically less. And like the hostility of the environment is another feature of that to me, whether it's just like it's we did this to ourselves through magical catastrophe or nuclear war or something, or if it's just like, well, we just don't have the means to produce what we need. We're diminished in that sense. So like I like it because it provides this harsh background on which to be a hero.
Yeah.
But for me, like when I'm playing a game, like it's easy to be a hero when it doesn't cost me anything. And I can just like, okay, well, yeah, it says I wrote down neutral good on my sheet. Like, of course I do it. But like, if the choice is whether my character survives or an innocent does, and they're in the position to help, do I help them with my limited resources? Like, if my character's survival isn't assumed, then the choice to be heroic is that much more like elevating to me.
Yeah.
Because like it's easy to murder hobo. Murder hobo is how everybody else is surviving out here,
Right.
you know. But if I don't want that, if I want a more heroic gameplay, it like really reinforces the sacrifice of it, and I find it's this nice juxtaposition. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks, and myself included, like the actual like keeping track of all of that and dealing with like the resource management of wilderness survival can be tedious and like a drain on gameplay. And I think that's a lot of folks' experience with that kind of game. But I have had it in games where it's not tedious, where it's quite enjoyable, and it makes for such great gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and what are some of the kind of classic apocalyptic settings that we've seen in either D&D or other games as well?
I think like Dark Sun is the big one that comes to mind. It's certainly a big influence for me. Like, I remember hearing about Dark Sun, where it's like you roll 5d4 for your stats, then you got to make like 5 characters at once and start at level 3 because it's so harsh. And like it was that kind of hard mode D&D.
Well, and Dark Sun took that apocalypse idea and said that because of the apocalypse, everything you kind of hold to be true can change, which was to me what I love the most about Dark Sun. I played a lot of Dark Sun in various editions, and what I loved was that it was things like, like halflings have these kind of baby faces, like little kids, but they're cannibals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And the elves are not, some ancient civilization full of pride and, ancient lore and stuff. They are thieves who live in these gangs throughout the wastelands and will probably leave you dead on the side of the road. And so it just threw everything you knew upside down. So it was all new and all fresh, which is something you can do with Apocalypse.
You can. It is a good excuse. And like in a lot of ways, a post-apocalyptic setting is just good to shake things up. It provides a convenient narrative fiction for that kind of thing. And I think that's what Dark Sun was trying to do with that, of like introducing Thri-kreen and like everything is psionic and, and like magic defiles this place. That's how this place became a desert in the first instance, like all of that, like with the bromart and just like, to me, captured my imagination, which is already primed for post-apocalyptic stuff and Land of the Apes and things like that. But when I'm thinking in terms of just pure D&D settings, like in this case D&D adjacent, because like Gamma World predates Dark Sun, and I love the gonzo weirdness of Gamma World. I love that your character is going to be changed in their life of adventure out in the wasteland, that you can wander into pockets of transmuting radiation and come out just looking like a total action figure from the 80s,
Right.
It appeals to me.
And you can be fighting with a stop sign, as your sort of pole arm type weapon or anything like that. And there have been some classic Gamma World for the 4th edition of Gamma World. There were some great adventures that did things like you'd go to the Seattle Needle because it's, there's some signal coming out of it or something like that. And just this weird, where you kind of barely know where you are as a person who lives in this actual world, but it makes it all the more fun and entertaining. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And things like Shadow of the Demon Lord is is actually one where it's not quite post-apocalyptic. It's on the edge of it.
Yeah, ongoing apocalypse, or imminent apocalypse, kind of. Yeah. They do a really good job of just the way the story structure is sort of set up in Shadow of the Demon Lord. It's like, okay, 11 games. That's all you got to worry about. And like each one, we see the collapse get progressively closer and closer. And you don't want the Demon Lord to show up. It's terrible. It's an apocalypse. And like, it's one of those things where for me, Weird Wastelands is very much informed by the Mournland in Eberron and Dark Sun. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of easy to forget that like divine apocalypses, whether it's like in Shadow of the Demon Lord or the Cataclysm in Dragonlance, are also a big part of D&D. Like I ran a 3rd edition Midnight game, which was part of the same setting search that produced Eberron, and the evil god wins, kicks out all the other good gods, and seals the world off. It's like Sauron wins, corrupts the Fellowship, and for the first few levels of play, like food and water are treasure. Like the players are tracking down like sacks of grain and ambushing orc patrols because they've got timber to build things with, and it's a very different style of game. And then, as they level up, you move on to bigger and better things. But it started out as very like nitty gritty resource survival kind of game.
That's cool. So let's talk a little bit about Weird Wasteland. So you've got this Kickstarter. It's way overfunding. It's doing really well. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
By the time this comes out, folks will have a little under 2 weeks. They'll have something like 13 days or something. My math's not perfect, but currently it has 20 days, and this will probably post 4 days. You have something like, I guess you have around 2 weeks to back it. So tell me, given all this awesomeness of post-apocalyptic settings, how this project came together.
Ooh, yeah. So we being YouTubers and sort of putting our content out there for RPG folks, we get a lot of questions about like, okay, when you're going to do this, when are you going to do that? Especially after Colville's Kickstarter blew up and it sort of became all right, YouTuber, your next kind of moment. And like, I'm a RPG supplement snob. Like I just am, I'll be honest. I buy a lot of them. I like a lot of them, but I have high standards. And I was like, well, I don't know. Do I want to do this? Like I didn't pursue a PhD because I was like, I really don't like writing. I'm told I'm all right at it. I'm told I'm good at it, but it's not a pleasant experience. But academic writing is very different than game design. And we just started thinking about it, about what kind of book we would want. And about a year ago, I got in touch with 2C Gaming. We've done some freelance work for them, and
they're great.
Asked them to sort of like be a writing coach and get myself in shape, both from a design perspective, as I was making that transition from homebrew DM, who makes a lot of his own content, but has a very intuitive and carefree approach to it, to someone's going to pay cash money for this thing that they expect to function and work without you being at the table to guide them through it. And so that's a big, big difference. And I wanted to make sure that if we were going to be asking our supporters and people who don't know us to support this project, that I could say with confidence, like, I've been preparing for this. And so a lot of that was like writing and design, and the product itself changed during that time until we approached this concept of a toolkit book. And for me, the supplement I've been missing for 5e is reminiscent of those third edition Sandstorm, Frostburn, Stormrack kind of supplements of, are you going to run a game in a desert? This is everything you need. Out on the ocean, everything you need. And of wanting to produce something like that, and something for players and DMs. And it is, it'll have implied setting elements to it. You can't help that, right? Like there's going to be encounter tables and things like that that imply things about the world, but for as much as possible to present a box of toys and tools that groups can put the game together with. Some groups are going to want to lean heavily into that wilderness survival. We're keeping track of our resources, and day-to-day survival is part of that. And we want to support that style of game. But some people just aren't. And they want to go adventure in these weird places and have a fun sort of like Mad Max themed D&D romp. Whether for a few sessions or short campaign or whatever, We don't want to prescribe any particular type of gameplay, but rather provide as many things as we could cram into it to support the sorts of things we enjoy about post-apocalyptic and Weird Wastelands.
Awesome. And how did you find that process as you all started to create this? What are some of the surprises or challenges you had when you were going through this process of finalizing this product?
Yeah.
Did you have too much material? Did you?
It's sometimes, in some ways,
struggle over which way to present it, or?
Yeah, the biggest challenge for me from a design perspective is like, excuse me, sorry about that. The biggest challenge that I found for me is, as a designer, is, when I would sit down to create something homebrew, it's a blank piece of paper. My DM notebook is a sketchbook, right? Like I will make a grid if I need one. I will draw a diagram if I need one. It's very visual because this is the thing I'm preparing for myself to run at the table, and it's specific. So not being able to see what it's going to look like on the page as I'm creating it has proved a sort of challenge for me, as I'm like, well, wait a minute, if it were me, I'd have the map and it'd be right here and it'd be a shorthand abbreviated. And I go, wait a minute, the new DM who doesn't have your experience and isn't living inside your head needs more than that. And so the challenge of getting enough information in a way that's readable is a challenge. I can see why adventure supplements get wordy. You have a degree of wanting to account for a lot of things that you can't. And I know for us, one of the things that we're doing is saying we're going to trust the players and the DM to figure it out. Like, we don't want to leave them hanging. We don't want to like suggest things and then not support that, but we can't account for everything. It'd be a 800-page book. You wouldn't want to use it, you know? But I love designing stuff. I love designing stuff for 5th edition. Yeah. I find it very easy given the way that the rules-based or exceptions-based rules-based design works. You know, word salad's coming out of my mouth now.
No,
yeah. Because you can just look at a little quirk of something and go, well, what if it was different? Mm-hmm. Like, and for positive or benefit, like, what if you're cursed with needing to eat dirt instead of drink water, or, you know, you can, you know, interact with dark vision in this unique way. And so I find it very enjoyable to like look for those little ways, especially if they haven't really been expressed yet, in order to embody some concept thematically, and have it have teeth and substance.
Yeah. There's a ton here that looks interesting. I wish we had the time to go into all of it. You've got a Scion class. You've got subclasses that have neat names like the Techno Wizard and the Scavenger Ranger, mechanics for exploration and things like that. But as we, so I'll just say that folks go check out the Weird Wastelands Kickstarter, and you can read all about what's going on here. There's a lot of fun to see.
Every video that we're putting out for the link to the Kickstarter relates to some aspect of it. So we've already had one on like the ways that we're looking at, well, as Emma has said, it fixing wilderness exploration, but she's the one in charge of SEO. Like our attempts to address it. I think by now, or maybe the next week's video will be our video on the Psionic class. So
cool.
A lot of these we dive into on our YouTube channel if folks want to check that out.
So anyone who's listening to this and maybe they just finished doing that DM's challenge and they're thinking, you know, one day I'd love to launch my Kickstarter. What advice would you give to somebody who has that dream of one day seeing a product that is in print, some hardback supplement that has their name on it? What's a path you might suggest for them or tips you have for them?
Let's say that it's work. And so a lot of times you might get excited because like the idea of it is exciting to you, but then you get into the weeds of it, you get the trenches, and you've got to do revisions and every, you know, approach it from a perspective of a little bit every day of learning as you go. And the enthusiasm you might feel in the beginning needs to be tempered because you can burn yourself out. And what I found myself, and this is like, I'm speaking as much to myself as I am to our prospective audience. This is how I operate if I'm not careful, is to like, it's a combination of pacing yourself and like managing that motivation, because there's going to be a time where you're like, I just don't want to go through with it. I've brainstormed. I've halfway finished a draft. I kind of know what it would look like. Can't I just, isn't this enough? But, you know, and like it might be for a homebrew game, but I think for something that you're going to put out there for others to see, it's worth to go through with the rest of the work. Like a game supplement is to me valuable when it gives me something I couldn't come up with off the top of my head and takes that extra step, takes that time to imagine more than what I can just come up with, or, you know, a DM could come up with. Or you've done the hard work for me. There's a lot of math involved. There's a procedure that needs to be written out step by step and made sure it doesn't fall apart when you try to play with it. If you've done that hard work of play testing and designing and the like, then that adds value, and it's worth it to then present that to prospective players and say like, hey, I made this for you. Yeah. I think you'll have fun with this. This is a good time. for you and your friends, because that's the whole point of all the design and information presentation and things. So yeah, I think the advice is to just don't give up when it gets hard, and just understand that, especially if you're getting feedback, which I would highly encourage, having a pair of eyes on it that is not yours, editing, content, word choice, whatever it is, like there's so many things that are valuable. Having someone else look at it, finding a community of people who can support you, because it's worth it. It's very worth it to see that product finished, and to look at it and go like, it might not be perfect. It's mine. I made it. Here it is.
Absolutely. It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure.
Congratulations to the team. I'm a backer. I'm excited to see where this ends up. All right. So we want to give our Patreon shout outs to everybody. Thank you to all our listeners and to all of our patrons out there. If you like the show, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/MMP. Jim, where can people find you and WebDM on social media to follow your work, to see what's going on?
Yeah, so WebDM all over the place. WebDM's on Twitter, Facebook, and the like under WebDM. Of course, we have our YouTube channel. Our second one, WebDM Plays, is our actual play archive. That is where my Land Between Two Rivers game, which is my Dark Sun homage and love letter, is posted, if you'd like to check that out.
Sweet. And
I myself am intermittently on Twitter, usually just retweeting or hearting something, at The Real Jim Davis. But for WebDM stuff, our main accounts are the place to go.
Excellent. Well, you can find me on Twitter at AlphaStream, and now on the Misdirected Mark forums as well. I maintain a blog at alphastream.org where you can subscribe and follow all of my articles. Shawn, who will be back at some point from slaying monsters, can be found on Twitter at Shawn.Merwin. No dot, just at Shawn Merwin. And he also hangs out at the forums. You can follow our podcast directly on Twitter at Mastering D&D. We always look forward to your advice. Thanks for the kind comments. Mastering Dungeons is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Hey, Jim, what are we going to go do now?
We'll go around those Weird Wastelands and kill some monsters.
Woo! Awesome.